Verse 260. Pain belongs to mind. Accumulation is the realm of knowledge. The remaining two truths and the Buddha stage are where transcendental knowledge functions. Professor Suzuki mentions in a footnote that these two truths refer to the Four Noble Truths. This phrase, the remaining two truths in the Buddha stage, it reminds me of the time we looked at the bhumis. This Buddha stage is not normally spoken of in relation to the Four Noble Truths, and I'm inclined to think that it refers to the two bhumis, the last two bhumis. But I certainly don't want to contradict Professor Suzuki, and I don't think there's any contradiction in applying both understandings. And I think it's probably time we looked at these Four Noble Truths anyway, because these begin with the truth of pain or of suffering. The first Noble Truth is to do with pain, suffering, or dukkha. Now, you might be familiar with the Four Noble Truths. Maybe you're a Buddhist or somebody who's interested in Buddhism. And I myself was a practicing Buddhist, or attempted to be a practicing Buddhist for some years. So I was familiar with the Four Noble Truths, but I didn't actually give them too much attention. They didn't seem to be particularly relevant or profound even. I read them, I heard about them, and I thought, yeah, fine, fair enough, there's pain. Pain has a cause. If you remove that cause, the pain will go away. And you remove the cause of pain by following the eightfold path. That's the Four Noble Truths. The truth of pain, the truth that it's got a cause, the truth that if you remove the cause, the pain will go away. And the fourth truth is to do with how that cause is removed. And it's removed by applying the eightfold path. What more is there to say about it? What more is there to think about it? And this attitude seems to be one that was carried through into the Mahayana. The Four Noble Truths tend to be a bit sidelined for more profound teachings. But let's remember the original context. The Four Noble Truths were the first teaching of the Buddha. And who did he teach them to? He taught them to his 5 companions. He spent some years with 5 companions wandering in the forests of India, searching for truth and applying various practices, most notably practices of extreme asceticism, whereby they gave themselves a very hard time. So these were people that were very committed, who'd done many practices, who perhaps had experienced what we might call higher states of consciousness. So this was the teaching of the Four Noble Truths that the Buddha gave to them. So it seems to me this is probably a very advanced teaching. And the next verse, which I might get round to in this video, bears this out. I'll just mention it actually. The attainment of the fruits, Nirvana, and the eightfold path. When all these truths are thus understood, there is Buddha knowledge thoroughly purified. And there may or may not be relevance to in the order here. The attainment of the fruits, this is realization. Nirvana, this is establishment in realization. And the eightfold path, this comes after Nirvana. So You actually practice the Eightfold Path after Nirvana has been reached. Enlightenment practice does not begin until enlightenment is at least touched. That's when the work really begins. That's when we're no longer seekers after enlightenment, but enlightenment practitioners. Once we've touched enlightenment, we see what needs to be done. We've touched the Buddha stage, but as verse 261 tells us, the Buddha knowledge needs to be thoroughly purified. So what do the Four Noble Truths have to do with this? Well, as enlightenment practitioners, we're either established in the true nature of our own awareness, or we're caught up in some mood or other. That mood might be pleasant, but at some point it will become unpleasant. As someone mentioned in a comment a while back, people don't get involved in the spiritual path because they're happy. It's because, to some extent, there's suffering, there's pain. And if you're in a mood, at some point there's going to be pain or dissatisfaction. And normally, when we're trying to remove pain, we look for a cure. We look for a cure in the world that presents itself to us. We look for understanding. We look for knowledge. But this just compounds the situation. It's establishing ourselves away from realization. It's further entrenching ourselves in conventional understanding. This is the second truth. It's the truth of craving. And here is the craving for understanding. It's not some crude, gross, materialist craving. Because remember, we're talking at a very advanced level here, a very subtle level. The Buddha's talking to his 5 ascetic brothers. They weren't interested in the latest mod cons. These guys had given up everything. And the Buddha's talking to them about craving. The craving being what is blocking them from realization of the truth. Now, they did have a particular lifestyle, and they were quite disgusted with the Buddha when he gave up on that lifestyle, when he took a bowl of rice or a bowl of curd. Yeah, I think it was a bowl of curd, because he was so emaciated that the others regard him as giving in to the temptations of luxury. So they were very attached to a particular lifestyle. On a personal level, though, we need to look at why we're not enlightened. What is it that our mind is constantly drawn to? These are our fetishes and our compulsions. It's maybe a bit of a diversion, but I was watching this Channel 4 documentary recently about this guy who was a compulsive hoarder. He couldn't throw things away. He had 2 houses, and they were crammed with rubbish. So much so that he couldn't actually walk from one room to the other. He had to crawl through tunnels of newspapers and rubbish, crawl and slither from one room to the next. He was a very intelligent fellow. He knew he had a problem, but he just couldn't let things go. He had this neighbour who was doing his best to help him and trying to get him to throw some things out. And the thing is, he always had a reason for not throwing something out. The newspapers he was planning to scan into a computer and form an archive. A used paper towel could be used again. A crushed plastic bottle. He had some use for it, some reason for not throwing it out, even though he didn't articulate it at that point. So this is the mind in operation. I watched this documentary with a sense of fascination and horror, partly maybe because I could relate to some of it, but this is the mind in operation, rationalizing its compulsions. There's actually a very good practice for finding out where you are with this kind of thing. The next time you're walking down the road, keep your gaze focused on the ground about 6 feet in front of you and observe the urge to look up, to take things in. Maybe have a look at the shop windows, maybe, or to see who's passing by. If you can do this easily and regularly, then you might be doing quite well. If you feel you're denying yourself something, well, that's something worth looking at. What if it's a beautiful landscape you're missing out on? Surely we can enjoy the landscape. Well, as enlightenment practitioners, there's something more wonderful than landscapes to be enjoyed. There's a sense of our own being, awareness, pure awareness. So this is the second truth, moving into the third truth. Can we let go of that very subtle desire to be distracted? So this is the accumulation, which is the realm of knowledge. We're looking for things. We want to know what's going on. Can we keep our gaze focused on the ground? And rather than feel deprived, feel rich. So this is the seeing into this craving and applying the eightfold path. I'm sure I'll look at the eightfold path at another date, but I'm inclined just to take these as the two bhumis. The importance here is the Buddha stage. This is where the transcendental knowledge functions, which is why I'd rather relate these to the last two bhumis, because these were to do with the intelligence of the enlightenment practitioner. The bodhisattva. The bodhisattva is no longer concerned with knowledge, with ideas. They're concerned with insight. They're concerned with the results of enlightenment practice. And they're concerned with what stops them from remaining in these results. And they're concerned with communicating the teachings. The bodhisattva at this point is making rapid progress. And this progress can only happen as a result of seeing, of honestly seeing one's limitations or one's limiting factors. There can be no excuses for indulging our moods, for indulging our fetishes, for indulging our compulsions. Sometimes the Four Noble Truths are taken by modern people in a psychological sense, but they're not psychological at all. They leave psychology behind. We're not working with our psychology. We're leaving our psychology behind. Awareness has got nothing to do with psychology. So we don't want to be analysing our moods. This guy on a documentary, The Hoarder, there was a mental health professional, a state-employed mental health professional called in, who had nothing useful to contribute to the situation. What this guy had to do, the hoarder, Richard I think his name was get rid of it all. Just get rid of it. Extremely painful, but there was no other way to do this. He made some progress in this with the help of his friend, but he needed to stop rationalizing his compulsions. And as much as he could see he had a problem, and as much as he could see it wasn't any way to live, when it came down to it, he wasn't going to stop rationalizing his compulsions. But as enlightenment practitioners, this is what we must do. Rationalizing our compulsions is part of our compulsive behavior. Rationalizing our moods is part of our moods. So we need to just let go of it all. Let go of it all. Come back to this awareness. This awareness is pure. It's got nothing to do with our psychology. This should be a great relief. We can actually let go of the whole burden of our personal psychology and rest in this awareness. There may still be some fundamental tones, our fundamental mood tone hanging around, but we look at that. Look at that. Maybe we can feel it in the body. We go deeper and deeper. This is the true power of the Four Noble Truths. We look for the cause of our own limitation. We look deeply within for why we're not enlightened. And we keep looking. Keep digging. We get rid of everything that we're hoarding. Everything that is our personal psychology. We let go. And then we might actually start recognizing some bliss.